Who remembers this? No, not that. This. The PSP, Sony's first ever handheld console. It was first released in Japan on the 11th of December 2004, and it was released to other parts of the world throughout 2005. I gotta say, this thing was genuinely ahead of its time. It was probably 2008 or so, when I was 7, that my dad bought my older brother a PSP for his birthday. And as soon as I had a few turns playing it, I couldn't stop pestering him to let me play on it. I spent so much of my childhood on this thing. I mean, it was basically mine after the first few months of my brother owning it, with how addicted I was to it. And eventually, he did end up passing it down to me, and I have carried on the family tradition, as I have since passed it down to my little brother as well. So as a result, the gameplay in this video you're watching is unfortunately not recorded myself, but I've referenced the source of each gameplay video on screen. But this thing, man, it could run so many of the iconic PS2 and PS3 games from back in the day. My favourite games had to be among the Simpsons Game, Secret Agent Clank, Lego Batman, Need for Speed Most Wanted, Wall-E, and last but definitely not least, GTA Vice City Stories and Liberty City Stories, which, fun fact, were initially made exclusively for the PSP and then were later brought to the PS2. Honestly, I feel like these games on their own deserve a whole video dedicated to the memories they gave me. And we'll get to the nostalgic memories I have of the PSP soon. But first, I think it's worth talking about what this thing could do, as well as its 10-year life cycle. And as a disclaimer, if you'd like to skip the rundown about the PSP, I've got timestamps below, so if you want to just get to the nostalgia, you can jump right ahead. Having the convenience of being able to play games on the go added a lot of value to this device. Mum could never know I was playing R18 games with how small the screen was. And the battery life was actually really good in my opinion. You could expect to get about 3 to 6 hours of gameplay, but the PSP didn't just offer portable gameplay. It also came with so many extra features. You could use this as a media player, playing your favorite songs and movies that we definitely didn't download illegally, then transfer onto the PSP. Yep, you could even transfer media from your computer to the PSP via USB. I already know what some of you are thinking, cut it out. I remember watching The Dark Knight on the PSP and it was the coolest thing ever. This thing could do everything, man. It even had an internet browser. Bro, the PS5 doesn't even have its own internet browser. Okay, that's cool and alright, but did you know you could also jailbreak the PSP? Now this is where things got a bit crazy. From being able to play any game you wanted for free to downloading modded game saves. Like, I remember my brother may or may not have downloaded a game save that would allow you to fly a military chopper in GTA Liberty City Stories that you otherwise couldn't even get. Like, you weren't even meant to fly choppers in that game. So obviously, as you could expect, this opened a whole can of worms for what the PSP could now do. Not that I ever did this, of course. I was a good boy growing up.
Stop the cap!
One thing I never actually tried but always wanted to do was connect up with another friend's PSP and play head to head on the same game. You could do this through local wireless play, which is crazy. Unfortunately, not really any of my friends actually had a PSP, so I missed out on this opportunity. The PSP's hardware was actually quite impressive considering it launched in 2004/2005. The LCD screen was 4.3 inches and capable of a pixel resolution of 480 by 272, which doesn't sound amazing, but I reckon the resolution actually looked good, all things considered. Now don't get me wrong, looking at it now it looks like poos. I swear it didn't look as bad back then, man. Physical games on the PSP were distributed on UMDs, Universal Media Discs, and the PSP is the only handheld console to use this type of disc for playing media and games. The control layout on the PSP was quite unique. On the left side you've got the analog stick, which actually identifies as a speaker. Yeah, one of my friends told me he actually thought the analog stick was a speaker. He literally didn't even know how to move his character for quite a long time until he realized it was actually the analog stick. I won't lie, I can kind of see where he's coming from. It does kind of look like a speaker, but did any of you think this at first? Because that was not my initial thought. I definitely realized it was an analog stick. Moving up, we've got the arrow keys, which for most games didn't really have any special use, as they typically just kind of did what the analog stick did for a lot of games, which was just moving the player. I know some games like GTA, it was used as the radio button, cycling through the radios. Now at the top we've got the left shoulder button. This was commonly used as the button to control the camera for most games. Again, using GTA as an example, you'd hold the left shoulder button and then move the analog stick to control the camera. And then on the right side you've got the classic PlayStation buttons and the shoulder button at the top right for some some games like, again, GTA, was used as the aiming button. The WLAN slider was also at the top of the device, and having this on would let you connect to the internet. This was also used for playing local co-op as well. The power button was this little slider on the right side of the console. Flick it up to turn it on and off, but the slider also had a weird feature where if you slid it down, it would put the console into what's called hold mode. This seemed to lock the controls, so you couldn't really do anything. Without knowing its true purpose, I found a purpose for it myself, pissing off my stepsister when I had to let her play. I chuck it on hold and she just thought the PSP just didn't like her. She couldn't do anything. And then as soon as I was on it, it was fine. The small buttons at the bottom basically serve the same purpose as your typical PlayStation controller. The layout was simple and minimalistic, just how it should be. With how many games the PSP could play and its convenience of being portable, the PSP appealed to a lot of gamers. And the numbers prove this with 80 million units sold across its 10-year lifespan. In fact, the PSP was originally meant to launch in PAL regions. So PAL refers to the region here in blue. I think it's something to do with like radio or television. So the PSP was originally meant to launch in these regions at the same time as North America, but due to the high demand for the PSP in Japan and North America, its launch to the PAL regions was actually pushed back to the 1st of September 2005 instead of the 24th of March, which is when it came to North America. The PSP sold over 200,000 units in Japan when it launched on the 18th of October 2004. North America ate it up as well, with 500,000 units sold in its first 2 days of launch. The PAL regions also proved to be big fans of the PSP, as in the UK, the PSP sold out in just 3 hours of its launch. And then it sold 185,000 units in its first 4 days of launch. The numbers for the other PAL regions can be seen here on screen. In later years to come, the PSP saw multiple revisions over its life cycle, with the first revised model being the PSP 2000, or the PSP Slim as it was more commonly known as. This was launched in the later half of 2007. As its name implies, this new edition of the console is slimmer and lighter than its original, and it also received some hardware improvements as well, which you can see here on screen. And just 1 year later, the PSP 3000 was released and was marketed as the PSP Slim and Light, or PSP Bright. Yeah, I don't know what they were thinking here, honestly. And there were some added hardware upgrades, but this was not seen as a significant upgrade to many people. Although it did do pretty well, in its first 4 days on sale in Japan, the PSP 3000 sold over 141,000 units. The big change came in 2009 with the release of the PSP Go. Compared to the original PSP, this was 43% lighter and 56% smaller, and it had a unique sliding mechanism to its screen which revealed the main controls. Similar to what we see now with new revisions of current gen consoles like the Xbox for example, the PSP Go didn't have a UMD disk drive, so a later version of the console removed a feature. I'll never understand this, man. So all games and media on this thing were purely digital. To try and counter for this though, Sony did make the PSP Go with 16 gigs of memory, which could also be extended up to 32 gigs with the use of a memory stick. To be fair, this was a large jump from the original PSP's 32 megabytes, but in my opinion, I don't think removing the UMD drive was a good move, as it also meant that the PSP Go was now region locked, as it could only be linked to one single region locked PSN account. And it continued to go downhill from here with another revision of the PSP called the PSP Street, which was released in 2011. This was labeled as a budget focused model, and that's putting it lightly. No wireless capability, no microphone, the brightness buttons were removed and you now had to adjust for brightness in the system's power save settings. Yeah, this was a bit of an L. And yeah, from the way I'm portraying these revisions of the PSP, it's pretty clear what my bias is. You can't beat the classics. I never actually bought any of the revisions of the PSP, as the original just did everything I wanted it to. It just played awesome games. It was simple. Now before we dig into some of my fondest memories on the PSP, we should at least acknowledge the existence of the PS Vita. This was released as the successor to the PSP. Obviously it offered many significant upgrades compared to the PSP, but ultimately it was labeled as a commercial failure, as it was significantly outsold by the Nintendo 3DS, and as a result, no direct successor was released from Sony going forward. Now into the nostalgia. The PSP had some absolute classics that left a permanent mark on my childhood. The Simpsons Game had to be one of my favorites. I couldn't tell you how many times I replayed that game. I loved being able to play the levels with two of the Simpsons characters, and you'd have to have both characters work as a team to progress through the level. And the Simpsons house opened up more and more as you progressed through the story. Fat Homer, man, he was the best. So many good memories. Releasing a game like this in 2024 would probably get cancelled, not gonna lie.
Oh my god, you're fat phobic. Oh my gosh, that's so offensive.
But the most memorable mission for me was having to take down the evil lard lad as Bart and Homer. Nothing like a bit of father-son bonding, eh? While I played a lot of the Simpsons game, I reckon GTA Liberty City Stories was my most played game on the PSP. Just hearing that soundtrack brings back so many memories. That soundtrack goes hard too, you gotta admit. I tell you what though, I was actually the man when it came to cheat codes on that game. They were that fun to use. Probably the cheat I used the most was the refill health cheat. But under this specific scenario, I'd activate the cars drive on water cheat, then send it into the water with my taxi, blasting Radio Del Mundo on full blast. But sometimes I'd hit the water upside down or with the car on its side. As a result, the health bar would begin to drop fast, but not fast enough. 7-year-old Bobby was dialed in, and I'd input the refill health cheat repeatedly, and I remember it so well. L1R1X, L1R1 square, L1R1. And I'd put this in at the speed of light, bro. I was quick. Such an easy cheat to remember. I'd be doing this repeatedly while also trying to gradually roll the car over until it was able to drive on the water again. Honestly, don't mess with me on that game, man. When I wasn't abusing the in-game cheats, well, I guess also when I was jamming the goated radio station, Radio Del Mundo. I forget what the name of the host is, but this guy's unhinged. Just listening to the nonsense that came out of this guy's mouth.
They say in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king, but what about in the land of the dumb? Who is king there? And maybe they don't have a king and instead live in a beautiful republic of morons, like a hippie sunbathing with a cow.
Let us sing in praise of Ram.
Yeah, probably another title that would probably get cancelled if it released today. As well as the weirdly catchy music that came along with this radio station, it entertained me for a long time. Of course I did play GTA Vice City Stories quite a bit too, although not as much. What I did enjoy about that game though was that you could swim, fly helicopters that were actually intended for you to fly, and even operate a hovercraft. Lego Batman. This was a game I had anticipated getting the most. For my brother's Christmas present, I practically begged him to ask for Lego Batman as one of his gifts. He didn't even care for the game, but he finally caved after I'd pestered him for so long. Far out, I'm actually a dick of a brother, eh? Man, I loved this game though. Any Lego game for that matter, I was a big fan of. With so many things to unlock and levels to play, this one left me with some good memories for sure. My favorite mission was definitely facing the penguin. I'll never forget his unlimited source of penguin bombs he just had chilling with him. Wally was the game I'd turn to when I'd eventually had enough of those games. I don't really remember heaps from that game, but I really enjoyed the puzzle aspect it had and the cutscenes in relation to the movie as well. After that, it was Secret Agent Clank. This game came with a PSP, but I'd never really given it a chance until my later years of playing the PSP. It just didn't really appeal to me that young, but I did not realize how awesome this game was, man. From taking down these massive robots on wheels as this puny guy just doing stealth attacks, to playing as Ratchet and fighting off the other prison inmates with these OP weapons, but also the silliness aspect it also had. I became very fond of this game. One of the games I also got to rather late was Need for Speed Hot Pursuit. I wasn't very good, but I still enjoyed it. My favorite objective was doing the near misses with other cars, and I think I vaguely remember getting to play it as the cops chasing after cars, but I could be wrong there. Someone verify it in the comments. I think you could do this. I did dabble in some other games like Little Big Planet and others later on. This was after my brother may have hacked the PSP and downloaded other games as well, but the games I've mentioned were the ones that stuck out to me and left me with some awesome memories. Okay, scratch what I said, because fast forward a few days later and I've found out that I'm able to actually get a PSP emulator running on my Xbox. So I've actually downloaded the games that I'm talking about in this video, and I jumped on GTA Liberty City Stories, and oh my gosh, even more memories are coming back to me that I didn't even have in part of this video. Another core memory I have of this game is going to the airport and trying to jump on the plane wing and then try stay on the plane as long as I can after it takes off. Man, this was so fun. I spent so much time doing this because you have to wait for so long, land on the plane wing, and then it takes so long for it to actually take off. Also, you know how I was saying with the driving on water cheat and I'd land my car like and flip it accidentally? Well, I forgot that the car would always flip too much and you'd have to keep trying to roll it back over. So yeah, I'm going to be having a lot of fun playing this. Hopefully this video was able to bring a bit of nostalgia to some of you. Even if you have different games or memories in your experience of having a PSP, or if you never even had a PSP, hopefully you found its history to be of some value. And let me know what memories you might have of the PSP as well. Either way, I greatly appreciate you taking the time out of your day to watch this video, and it would mean a lot to me if you liked the video and subscribed. And also, let me know if you'd like to see more videos like this, as I really enjoy being able to relive some of my childhood and sharing it with you guys. Anyway, enough rambling. I'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys.